Our tale begins on May 14, 2018, when Jolene Cummings, a 34-year-old mother of three, was reported missing. The last trace of her was on May 12th, leaving everyone anxious and puzzled. Plans for Mother's Day and her birthday evaporated into thin air. As investigators plunged into the abyss of uncertainty, the community rallied to find Jolene. The days turned into weeks, with no sign of her. This is the case of Jolene Cummings. Jolene was reported missing on May 14, 2018. The last time she was seen was May 12th. 2 days earlier, when she finished her shift at the beauty salon she worked for in Yulee, Florida. Everyone was alarmed because just the next day was Mother's Day along with her birthday, and she had plans of how she was going to spend it with her children. But those plans were never possible once there was no sign of Jolene. Her mother was reported missing, and the search for her began. Everyone was already imagining the worst. No one could believe that someone could do something like this to Jolene, because everyone she knew described her as a spectacular person, an inspiration, and someone very strong. She was practically single-handedly taking care of her 3 children on her own salary. Unfortunately, no matter how hard the police searched, they could not find any sign of Jolene. Jennifer Seibert, Jolene's co-worker at the salon, was the last person to see her alive, but from that, they could only learn that Jolene left work in her van. Until May 16th, 2 days after she was reported missing in the parking lot of a Home Depot, police found Jolene's van abandoned. But there was no trace of Jolene's violence on it, not even fingerprints that could be lifted. But there was a recording of how the van arrived, and investigators immediately proceeded to view the recording to find out who the driver was. And this is what happened. The recording shows that around 1 a.m. the day after Jolene was last seen, the van drives through the parking lot of the store and sits there for several minutes without moving. Investigators wonder why Jolene just sits there parked. Until it opens at the driver's door, and they see that it was not Jolene who was driving, but Jennifer Seibert, her co-worker. From this, the investigators started testing with luminol to see if there were blood samples in the salon where Jolene was working along with Jennifer. And what they found was very disturbing. Blood stains all over the walls on the carpet. There were blood samples all over the salon. The mop had blood on it as well. There was blood on the floor and still marked on one of Jennifer's scissors. Even though there were blood samples all over the place, it was still not visible to humans because someone probably took care of cleaning them well. But with these luminol tests, it is almost impossible to clean everything completely. The investigators took tests of the blood that was in the room, and it was determined that indeed it belonged to Jennifer and also to Jolene. In addition, a nearby store had a camera pointed at the nearest dumpster, and that same day Jennifer was seen throwing several bags into the dumpster. Some of these bags appeared to be very heavy because of the effort Jennifer had to make to throw them away. There is a recording of Jennifer shopping at Walmart, and her shopping cart was somewhat suspicious. The purchase was an electric knife, many bags of garbage, gloves, and ammonia without even disguising it. With this evidence, the police arrest Jennifer for auto theft, and there they start asking her about the marks on her face. On one occasion, Jennifer replied that it was from bed bugs, and on another that it was from a motorcycle accident. But why is Jennifer acting so weird? Well, first of all, her name is not Jennifer. The police discovered that her social security number was fake, and they found out that her real name was Kimberly Kessler. Her past was worthy of a movie. To anyone, it may seem a little weird with a motorcycle accident that left those wounds on her face when she didn't even have a motorcycle. Kimberly Kessler was born on May 9, 1968, in Butler, Pennsylvania. How did this woman end up being named Jennifer Seibert and living in Florida? Not only had she changed cities more than once, having lived in a total of 33 cities in 14 different states, but she also changed her name about 18 times. The ideas for her new names came from her visits to the cemetery or from newspaper obituaries. Her name, Jennifer Seibert, for example, came from a teenager who died in an automobile accident. Kimberly's best friend growing up commented that Kimberly was a normal girl and everything was fine at home. But like many, as they got older, they lost touch, and she didn't hear from her again until they were both about 22. In the middle of the night, Kimberly calls her childhood friend to tell her that she had a problem with her brother Bob, with whom she was having some sort of toxic affair. So Kimberly wanted to get revenge at her brother. And since Kimberly lived next door to this boy, she waited for him to fall asleep. And when Kimberly was sure Bob was already asleep, she hit him with a baseball bat in the mouth, smashing all his teeth. Her friend thought that would be the last time she would hear from Kimberly, but unfortunately, it wasn't the case. In 2018, Kimberly met a man on Facebook named David. This man knew Kimberly as Maya Stone, which was the name she is using at the time. David comments that Kimberly was a bit of a strange person. David lived in Texas. They both hadn't known each other very long, but that wasn't stopping Kimberly from driving over 1,000 miles to Texas to eat some burgers with good old David, and once they're out of nowhere, Kimberly pulled out a ring and proposes to David. David obviously doesn't know her very well and says no. But the crazy thing is that here, David, a month later out of the blue, gets a call from investigators that Kimberly was the prime suspect in the murder. David tells investigators, "I don't know any Kimberly." So the officers make it clear who they mean by, because David was one of the few people Kimberly had a contact with via Facebook. So David, once knowing Kimberly's real name and seeing her without any wig, because yes, Kimberly used disguises and different phone numbers for each of her names, well, David, seeing that this Mia Stone's real name was Kimberly Kessler, realized that they knew each other in childhood. David was Kim McCall's cousin, and Kim revealed to him that when she and Kimberly were little, Kimberly said that David was her crush, so Kimberly somehow wanted to relive her childhood love. They also talked to Timothy Burns, who was a partner and lived together with Kimberly after high school. When they told him that Kimberly was the prime suspect in a homicide, he says, "This doesn't surprise me about her," who comments that Kimberly appears to be a good person and friendly, but is once here by his real side, it's the worst. Who once so calmly stabbed him in the chest and left a big wound on his father's leg from a bite. Father who once accompanied Kimberly, who wanted to go to the cemetery, and he thought it was to visit a relative's grave, then ended up realizing that Kimberly only wanted to go to see graves of girls who might have been born the same year as her in 1998. Kimberly had a son. Her son's father's name is Tim Edwards, who was her partner from 1997 to 1999. At that time, Kimberly was under the alias of Melissa McCartney, and when it came time to sign the certificate for when her son Tim was born, she realized that Kimberly was using a false name, as she signed the document as Christina Brooks. Kimberly's excuse when she was discovered was that she was using false names so her mother wouldn't find her, that she was a little afraid and didn't want to hear from her. When Kimberly's son was 15 months old, Kimberly had an altercation with a neighbor. The neighbor ended up calling social services, and some agents decided to pay a visit to Kimberly's house to see if everything was all right. There, Kimberly had yet another altercation with the agents, so the next day, when Kimberly's son Evan was in daycare, the agents decided to take the child to their offices because they concluded that Kimberly was not fit to raise a child because of how unstable she was. So Kimberly, like a good mother, took a gun and went to get her son from the social services office. And for all these acts, Kimberly ended up in jail. Her husband started to take full custody of the child. Once Kimberly and out of jail, she decided to start a new life away from everyone she knew and never said goodbye to Tim or her son Evan. Once contacted about what happened, Evan tells the media that it is very sad for him, that he never saw a picture of his biological mother in his whole life. The first time he would see her was when the FBI knocks on his door to inform him everything Kimberly has done. He doesn't want to know anything more about his mother, and that he doesn't want to be involved in this anymore. But Kimberly's real craziness would start in 2000, when apparently Kimberly, after several years, regains contact with her mother and tells her that her son Evan died 15 months after he was born. That she is afraid of her husband, so she is going to be traveling all over the country. And here's where Kimberly's new life begins, because since 2004, those who knew her as Kimberly Kessler never heard from her again. In fact, her mother reported her missing in 2012, and nothing more was heard from her until 2018, that she was already under arrest. Apparently there is no hatred between the two, as they had certain conversations about all this on the phone and with Kimberly talking from jail. A conversation Kimberly had with her mother on the phone. Kimberly's mother tells her that she is tired of the media talking so bad about her when the trial has not even been done, because she believed all the lies Kimberly was telling her. Kimberly tells her to be calm, that she is sure that Jolene's disappearance is the fault of the Illuminati, and that the easiest thing to do is to blame her. All this in a very serious tone. Kimberly was also married twice when she lived in Arizona. All this with the same man named Zelon Losey. This man, despite being more than a decade without knowing anything about Kimberly, said that Melissa, because that's how he knew her, as Melissa McCartney was a sweet person and did not believe what they were accusing her of. Although, when the officers asked her what their relationship was like, it looks like the relationship was very toxic. They were married twice in 2 years. He says there were problems, but they loved each other. When Kimberly was arrested, she had 4 active false names. This was found out because she had 4 cell phones in her possession registered to those 4 names, maybe more. Now on to the case. What happened to Jolene and what will happen to Kimberly Kessler? The justice process has been a bit frustrating, and it is more than clear that Kimberly had a hand in all of this. The trial started in 2019 because Jolene's body has not been found to this day. Jolene's 3 children right now live with their grandmother because Jolene's ex-husband does not make enough money to be able to take care of them. In the months after Jolene's disappearance, the community rallied together to raise money for her 3 children. Kimberly has done many crazy things since she was arrested, such as fighting with her cellmates and screaming angrily in court. She also insulted her lawyers in front of everyone.
Jordan Beard is Jolene's cousin.
Jordan Beard is Jolene Cummings' cousin.
Jordan Beard is Jolene's cousin. And I refuse this assigned counsel
Who runs the jail, who recently retired. He still comes in.
When she was arrested, she weighed 196 pounds. But due to a hunger strike to be moved to another jail, Kimberly did not eat for 56 days and weighed 72 pounds. That same year, the judge declared Kimberly incompetent to receive a normal sentence. After the judge's declaration, Kimberly was sent to a psychiatric hospital, which was very frustrating for Jolene's mother. But after further investigation in January 2020, the trial was resumed and Kimberly was declared competent for a normal sentence. Unfortunately, everyone knows what happened in 2020, and the pandemic caused the legal process to be delayed. The update. Kimberly Kessler is seeking to have her conviction overturned through a court filing by her lawyers. They argue that Kessler was not competent to stand trial and are not requesting a new trial, but new proceedings. Despite being ruled fit for trial in the final 2 of 3 competency evaluations, Kessler's attorneys claim that the judge unreasonably ignored psychologists' assessments and want the case sent back for new proceedings, potentially involving another mental competency hearing. The defense contends that Kessler's competency for trial was an unreasonable determination of facts, citing her belief during evaluations that she was being gassed in jail and her obsession with unfounded connections to the FBI and Hitler. They argue that Kessler's right to due process was violated when she was tried while incompetent. Attorney Gene Nichols, not involved in the case, explained that a court typically relies on expert testimony to determine a defendant's competency, and in this instance, it became a battle of the experts. The judge ultimately made a credibility call, favoring the expert who deemed Kessler competent. Nichols noted the difficulty of overturning a judge's credibility call in a district court of appeal. During the trial, Kessler was repeatedly removed for making outbursts in court. The jury that convicted her never saw her during the 2-week trial. Kessler is currently serving a mandatory life sentence, and Jolene Cummings' remains have never been found since her disappearance in 2018. As we conclude this chapter on the disappearance of Jolene Cummings and the enigmatic journey of Kimberly Kessler, the search for justice persists. Despite the twists and turns, the fate of Jolene remains unresolved.